Hey everybody, welcome to this video with myself, Sarah Lean. I'm excited for you to join me today for this live stream. I've picked out some of the latest public previews that have been announced with Azure over the last month or so, and I want to share them with you. We'll highlight the news announcements and show you some demos where we can. And of course, we want to hear from you. So if you've got any questions or any comments, please put them in the chat box below. I'd really appreciate that. But before we jump into the nitty gritty, make sure you hit that like button, you're hitting that subscribe button, and you've enabled that ring the notification bell button so as you never miss out on future content. So let's get started, folks. So the first up, we have the Azure Virtual Machine Scaleset zonal expansion. And with the Azure VMSS, which is short for Azure Virtual Machine Scaleset, it now allows you to expand from your regionally configured virtual machines to zonally configured virtual machines scale sets, boosting your business continuity and resilience while improving the availability of your service level agreement, ultimately. Azure's availability zones are distinct data centers in a region providing unique cooling, power, networking systems, and the VMs can be distributed across multiple zones, ensuring that higher SLA guarantees. The zonal redundant configuration was previously a labour-intensive and disruptive process, but the new feature makes migration straightforward, minimising those disruptions for you. So to get access to this public preview, you need to register your Azure subscription. And in order to register your Azure subscription, you need to issue a few commands. If we look at the documentation, and I'll share a link below in the show notes, these are the 4 commands that you need to register. Now, it can take a little while for these feature flags to enable on your subscription, but once they enable, you will have access to this public preview. If we switch over to my Azure environment, I can actually show you this. So I have a resource group with a few items inside it. So if we scroll down to my virtual machine scale set here, we can have a look at it. So if we scroll down inside my availability and scaling configuration, you'll see that I have 0 availability zones configured. So if we click on edit, which is the new preview feature, we will be able to actually select availability zones. So here I could enable 1, 2, 3, or I can enable 2. So let's enable 2 and click on apply. Now it'll take a few moments for this to actually enable, but this gives you a really great a feature to be able to actually enable that zonal expansion so you can change what's happening with you. And there you go, it's saying that it's completed. So if we refresh our Azure portal, let's see how good it is. Maybe we'll need to change and move a bit. So yeah, you can see now here I'm in the availability zone with my virtual machine scale set in zones 1 and 2 within North Europe. So really easy and really quick to configure for your virtual machine scale sets. So next up we have is virtual machine hibernation. This is where virtual machines in-memory state is persisted in the operating system disk and the virtual machine is deallocated to save on compute costs. And we all want to save on compute costs, right? Only the storage and networking resources associated with the virtual machine are charged during hibernation. Resuming the virtual machine later resumes applications and processes from their previous state. Now, Windows Server 2022 and 2019 are supported by this feature, as well as Windows 11 and Windows 10. Plus, there are certain Linux operating systems that support it as well, so make sure you're double checking the operating system support for this feature. While you're checking which operating systems are supported, make sure you're checking the virtual machine sizes as well, as there are a small selection of sizes that are actually aware of this feature and enable them. And again, to be able to get access to this preview, you need to register your Azure subscription for it. So let's have a look at how you actually enable this preview inside your Azure subscription and actually how you enable it as well. So if we go back into my Azure environment, and to enable this preview feature, we want to go into subscriptions. We'll click on the subscription that I have here that I want to use. So if we scroll down into preview features, We have the ability to search for various different features here within our Azure environment. So if we search for hibernation, if I can spell it right, sometimes this is very temperamental, so you have to hit refresh on it. It's not going to search for it. In amongst this list, which is not actually alphabetized at all, you'll find the hibernation one. Hopefully, when you do it and you're a subscription, it will be there and available for you. It's just not searching for me, folks, for some reason. So sorry about that. However, if we go back into my resource group and find this Azure virtual machine, we've got this hibernation virtual machine. And we have that ability to be able to hibernate it. So if we click on this button here, it will, as it say, hibernate this virtual machine, and we can click on yes, and that will hibernate that virtual machine, saving us on compute costs. So that's something to have a look at and enable within your environment if you want to have that feature and test it out and see how it works. So next up, something that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about at Ignite is Microsoft Copilot for Azure, which provides insights into your workloads, unlocks untapped Azure functionality, and orchestrate tasks. It utilizes large language models, the Azure control plane, and insights about a user's Azure and Azure Arc assets. Azure's commitment to preserving data security and privacy is also part of Copilot, so that's something to be aware of as well. I actually don't have access to this to demo you, unfortunately, but hopefully it's something that you can have a look at, sure, very soon. It was announced at Ignite, so hopefully we'll get that again soon inside our Azure environments. So next feature I want to talk about, and this was again announced at Ignite, is private subnet. This public preview enables secure connectivity to the internet. Currently, virtual machines created in a virtual network without any explicit outbound connectivity are automatically assigned a default outbound public IP address, leading to a number of security loopholes. Now, this new feature lets users prevent any new subnets from inheriting implicit connectivity by turning off the default outbound access feature within the networking settings and allowing you to choose your own methods for outbound internet connectivity. So what I want to do is show you this because this is enabled across everybody's Azure subscription. So if we dive into my Azure subscription, you can see this in action. So we want to create a new virtual network to show you this feature. So if we head on over to virtual networks and click on create, I have this option. So I start to build out my virtual network. So if we put it inside a resource group and we'll call it livestream VNet. Now, the next screen within your crafting a virtual network is all about security and whether you want to have Azure Bastion, Azure Firewall, DDoS protection enabled. Because I'm just demoing this at the moment, I'm going to skip those. So if we hit on next, we get the section where we can start to create our subnets. If we click on add a subnet, this brings up this Windows configuration box as well. If we scroll down, here we have the ability to turn on the private subnet. So we can do that and enable that and start to configure it from there. So this should be available to everybody's Azure subscription. So take a look if you haven't already. Make sure you're trying these new features out and these public preview features available to you as well. So the next feature I want to talk about again was something that was announced at Ignite, and this is the Azure NetApp Files standard storage with cool access. So you can configure inactive data to move from Azure NetApp Files standard service level storage, so that's ultimately the hot tier, to an Azure storage account, the cool tier. And in doing so, data blocks that haven't been accessed for some time will be kept and stored in the cool tier, resulting in cost savings. Now, Azure NetApp Files supports 3 service levels that can be configured at the capacity pool level. So you've got standard, premium, and ultra. Cool access is an additional service only on the standard service level. Now, this feature is currently available in multiple regions, and plan is to add it to more over time. So again, have a look at this and see if it's supported within the regions that you are using to see if you can leverage this new cool access and ultimately cheaper storage for some of your inactive data. Now, sticking with Azure NetApp, this was something that was announced after Ignite, so at the tail end of November this year. So you now have the ability to choose a minimum size of 1 terabyte when creating a capacity pool. So capacity pools smaller than 2 terabytes in size can only be used with volumes using standard network features. This allows customers to start with 1 terabyte as a minimum pool size and increase with 1 terabyte increments. So for capacities less than 2 terabytes, this Azure feature saves money again by allowing customers to reevaluate the volume planning to take advantage of smaller capacity pools and ultimately the savings there. Now, this feature is supported in all regions with the standard networking features. So again, it should be available to you if you're using one of those standard network featured enabled regions for your environment. So again, check this out because it's another great way of trying to save costs within your Azure NetApp files implementation. So this is a feature that was announced in December, and that's the Azure Virtual Machine Regional to Zonal Move. Now, this feature allows you to move an existing virtual machine in a regional configuration deployed without any infrastructure redundancy to a zonal configuration, so deployed into a specific Azure availability zone within the same region. Now, this feature is part of the momentum that the team created around the virtual machine scale set zonal expansion feature that I talked about earlier on, and really reinforces the Azure wide zonal strategy that you have and recommend with a lot of the configurations that you use. This new public preview feature allows you to move your existing regional virtual machines into availability zones that are not available potentially when the virtual machine was created in your region of choice, and ultimately increase your application resiliency and availability supported by that 99.99 uptime SLA for virtual machines that have 2 or more instances deployed across 2 or more availability zones. Now, if I remember correctly, this should be available within your Azure subscription, so check that out already. You can have access to this. So it's great for, like the example said, being able to move Azure virtual machine that didn't have any availability zones available when you created it into an availability zone configuration. So definitely check that one out, folks, as well. Now, this announcement was something, again, that was made in December 2023, and that's the Disk Integrity Tool for confidential virtual machines. The Disk Integrity Tool is built on top of the existing confidential virtual machine flow, enables you to measure and attest that your operating system disk is launched as expected. Now, this tooling comes as a Azure CLI extension that organizations can install into their own trusted environment, run a few simple commands, and the integrity protection of the root and system partition of your disk happens. Now, after the confidential virtual machine boots with the integrity protected disk, users can cryptographically attest that the operating system's disk, root, or system partition contents are secure and as expected before proceeding with any confidential workloads. This helps to complete the attestation story from the hardware layer to the application layer inside your confidential virtual machines. Now, with this feature, we're seeing it enabled in a few regions. So it's in Europe West, Central US, and East US too currently. And we should see it in Europe North in January 2024. So that's something to have a look at and to check out as well in the future, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this live stream and listening to me talk about the latest features or the latest public preview features that were announced over the last couple of months inside Azure. Hopefully it's been useful to you. And again, check out the show notes for any information or any other future features that I talked about so you can grab a hold of them and use them. But thank you so much, folks. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully see you again soon.